I said it like a million times that I was not going to do that because I wanted to make sure that people understood. And yeah, it was like, it was not that crazy. It was crazy material, and it was all satirical humor about the world and how women don't have rights. And like, I made one about like how my nipples are so scary even though they're like the same size as like a dude's because I don't have boobs, and how mine are legal but his aren't. And I took that one off even though everything was covered. I was just wearing duct tape, and I was just trying to make some points and prove some stuff. And then people started like calling the cops to like make sure I was okay because I thought I was going crazy. And that's why I wanted to like talk to Jim Carrey like through this video, or someone like Ellen DeGeneres. Why? Because I've got your fish tattooed on my leg. There she is. Oh. Dory. Okay. I don't know if you can see it, but I have Dory tattooed on my leg with the words, "Just keep swimming." And I got that for my mom and also for me. But it is to remind me to keep going because it was my 1-year anniversary of surviving on this island tattoo. And they say like after like 2.5 years, like you're supposed to be accepted and that you can finally be like a local. And I'm reaching that year, that 2.5 year mark, and I'm hoping that all the bad stuff is behind me and that everything's going to work out. I know that the dogs are going to be returned to me. I just need people's help. I need help getting a lawyer. I need help with people understanding what goes on at the Humane Society and how they completely lied, how the hospital lied, how the hospital was also drugging me like way too much. I ended up getting Depakote poisoning from the hospital. My hands were shaking really badly. I haven't had a period in 2 months and I'm not pregnant, which is really bad. And my levels were supposed to be at like, I think like 60 to 80 or something like that. And they were like 160. So yeah, they were way too high, and they only blood tested me twice while I was in the hospital. So I think that's not very good as far as trying to make someone better. They were just trying to numb me, which is what happened. So then I decided to withdraw myself slowly from the medicine because it was making me shake and it was making me feel crazy. And so, yeah, I went through that all by myself, which was not fun. It gave me really bad headaches. And now I'm just going solo, trying to live this life now without my dogs, trying to get my life back. So not only was I put in the hospital, when I got out of the hospital, I was wrongfully evicted from my house. I was not given like eviction papers or anything like that. I was just kicked out and said you have to get your stuff and like you don't have a house anymore. So that sucked. And so then I was like homeless, and then I went to the hospital one more time. And so because they basically were like, well, she's homeless now, she doesn't deserve to have her dogs back. And even though I was homeless with my dogs before and they had an excellent life, they had a great life, I've just been struggling, and it doesn't mean that I don't deserve them. I got my stuff together within 1 month. I have a house, I have 3 jobs. I'm going to start making my property good for them, and then they're going to have a permanent place that no one can ever kick me out from again. And they had no right to do this to me, and I know what it looked like, how I left everything and how I made people feel, was that I was like losing my mind. And Jim Carrey seems to think that it's not losing your mind, it's just something else that other people don't understand. Like a little thing called Enlightenment. We don't have to say that if you don't think that that's an appropriate term. But Jim Carrey, my hero since I was a little kid, seems to think that enlightenment looks a lot like insanity. And I have looked up to him since I was a child. So if he agrees with it, then I'm going to agree with it too. And I agree with everything that he says. Like, I believe that we are all one, and I know this now. Like, what happened to me after the group text, I can't really explain in easy words. But I will try. Okay. So, group text. Thought that my message was getting out to the world because maybe I was manic, or maybe I was just excited. You know, maybe it's just the same thing. I was excited about an idea that I had, thought I was changing the world, or I thought I was making my plans to change the world because I was going to start my YouTube channel and all this stuff. And I just wanted to help people. And so I thought that maybe people were like getting it and that it was trending, but I wasn't getting on the internet, so I didn't know. I just wanted to see, I just wanted to wait, and I was like, well, I'm going to protest. And so I'm going to starve myself, like, basically, because I didn't have food in my house. Like, I had to go buy more food, and I didn't really want to, but I also, like, was trying to prove a point. I was like, I'm going to wait until something is said, like, because if this becomes something that's like a trending thing, and like people are talking about it by the news, like the president will have heard something about this weird chain text thing. And I really thought that people would understand it and that they would do it, you know? But I just freaked a lot of people out. I'm sorry about that. I wasn't trying to freak anybody out. I was trying to prove a point, like playing telephone. How when one message starts at something and then like down the road it completely is something else. I was trying to kind of demonstrate that about how the government works and how information is given to people through the news, and how we're just very blind to the real world, and it's just crazy how we live sometimes, and how, like, the things that we complain about, like the things that I'm complaining about, like I just want my dogs back. I mean, other people don't have houses, other people don't have their families together, like we all have this pain, we all have this burden, but like at least I understand it, and it consumes my life. Like, it's the reason why it's hard for me to talk to people who don't have compassion like I do, because I just don't see how, like, you can look at the world and not just be disgraced with how humanity is, how people treat each other. And, like, I truly believe that it's possible for us to all come together and stop fighting and stop hating, and, like, this is all even, like, it's not even real in the first place. Like, we're just like a speck of dust in an infinite cosmic universe, as Kesha would say. Like, let's just say that after the group text, I started to understand the songs coming from the radio as like responses to what I was saying to my computer. Like, just out loud. Like, I had a couple of camera devices on, I had my computer on, I had my phone on, but like nothing was actually recording. But yet there was space that was continuously being taken from my phone because it kept filling my phone up and I had to keep deleting it, which was weird, even though I wasn't actually recording anything. And so I was like thinking that maybe, oh, yeah, they are really like watching me. Like, it was just a conspiracy kind of thing. But I also kind of thought that it could be true. And then the things I started to say were straight up being responded to with music from this new radio station, like the newest radio station in Hawaii. It was so crazy. Like, I started to add songs that they played, and the songs started to change from like being happy songs to like the end of the world is kind of near us and you should point to God kind of songs. And that's like the short version. It was a very long, drawn-out process. It happened for like 2 days. I was thinking these songs were like talking to me through the radio. I know that sounds crazy, but I was like, well, if aliens exist, which Tom DeLonge has always taught me that they do, and I believe that they do, and there's no reason for us not to believe that they do, because we are just so small in this entire universe. So what do we know? We don't know anything. I do believe that there's some kind of creator, God, the aliens, universe, something that we don't understand, and maybe when we die, we all get to understand what that is, the oneness. But I think that you can get to that level of understanding here on Earth, and I think that I've gotten to that level, and nothing makes sense here anymore. And I straight up believe in magic after what happened, because I can't explain it in any other way. So the music started. I made a playlist on Spotify that started to add the songs that they were playing. And I added them in like threes. So the name of the Spotify playlist is like 808, A Whole New World with You, something like that. And the songs that came on were like Jesus Take the Wheel, and like you better pray like for your sins and all this stuff, like weird songs like that. It wasn't like music like that before. And besides the music thing, there was like a whole bunch of weird stuff that was happening at my house. Like, this is the stuff that I need to write down, and eventually one day I will, when I feel creative about writing. Because it is creative. Whatever it happened, it was the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. So, basically, oh man, basically, I just had this understanding that was coming from somewhere else. Not me. It was like it wasn't voices in my head. It was, I guess it was kind of like, not like voices, like it was just like a stream of consciousness that was not my own. And it was reassuring, and it just made me feel like everything was going to be okay. And that what I was doing was going to help people, and it was going to help animals, which is what I've always wanted. And it was just this overwhelming understanding that God or aliens or someone exists, and that they were communicating with me in this way. And I felt so connected to whatever it was. At first I was really afraid of it because I had no idea what was happening, and like my heart was like in my chest, and like I was really scared. And then like, because all of this weird stuff started to happen. Like, for instance, I made some rice for my dogs, okay? I made a pot of white rice for my dogs. I mixed it in with their dog food. And I had put it in the refrigerator to cool it down or whatever. Just I had it in there. And then the next day, when all this other weird stuff started to happen, I went into the bowl of rice, and there was an egg inside of it. Like one egg, like an Easter egg. Like, kind of like in a game where, like, you get an Easter egg and it's like, oh, haha, you found something new that was a hidden item. Kind of like that, or like, kind of like Jesus, an Easter egg. And, yeah, I did not put an egg in the rice. I don't even know how that would happen. Like, I didn't boil one egg with a pot of rice. And then there was like this Newman's popcorn bag. That had like cheese inside of it. And it was just supposed to be regular popcorn. I know that doesn't sound crazy, but like the whole box was regular popcorn. And then I opened this bag up without popping it, and there was like cheese inside of it. And it was the weirdest thing ever. Like, these things sound like nothing. Basically, I was getting information from somewhere else, okay? And they started to tell me that, like, not in word for word the world is gonna end, but it was kind of like, yeah, the world's gonna end, and you gotta figure out how you're gonna tell everybody. And I was like, what? Like, I started to kind of freak out a little, because I was like, am I the only one hearing this radio station with all this music playing? And then they kept on talking about how on my birthday, which was September 28th, that the Comic-Con was coming. And I was just like, the aliens are coming for Comic-Con on this island in the middle of nowhere. They're going to come and they're going to either take the people who are here, or they're, yeah, basically that's what I kind of got from it. And I was like talking to Tom, through the thing, saying, I was like, Tom, if you can hear me, I need you to phone home. Yeah, because Tom DeLonge should know more about aliens than I do, and it'd be great to talk to him about my experience. So basically, I was under the impression that there was going to be something bad that was happening on my birthday, and I didn't know what I was predicting, but I predicted me going to the hospital because I got out the day before my birthday, and then I ended up going back in like a couple days later. I actually was there on my birthday because I didn't have the medicine with me, so they made me wait in the hospital for like an hour and a half to get my dosage, which was crazy. So anyway, and then they gave me something that was not even supposed to be prescribed to me, and it made me feel like I got hit by a bus. So my birthday was not fun, and I felt like crap the whole rest of the day afterwards. So I thought that something bad was going to happen, and I told only a few people about it because it was really hard for me to explain. And I knew I sounded crazy. But the people I told were like people who really knew me and knew my kind of crazy. Like, they know that, yeah, I believe in fairies and I have Peter Pan tattooed on my back, but I've always been a scientist, and I don't say that I believe in God really, and, you know, yeah, and now I'm saying that all this stuff is real. I was trying to explain to them, like, how crazy it felt to me, but I knew it was real, and most of them didn't believe me. And that's okay. But I started doing some weird stuff, like writing words down and saying them backwards, because I found like a lot of hidden messages in words, which I had written down on like a huge poster. And magically in all of this, that huge poster has has vanished. It was stolen along with a lot of other stuff that was stolen from my house when I was in the hospital. Yeah, people broke in and stole my stuff. They stole my laptops that had pictures of me and the dogs and my whole life, which is something that I can't even really like fathom the idea of how much that makes me sad, because it's just memories. But I want my dogs back before that, because that's not real. Speaking of pictures, here's another one. That's Keebler, me in the snow. That's Remedy, how she used to lay on my neck. Man's best friend. Yep, they are. And anyway, so when all this weird stuff started to happen, I can't really remember the order of operations, but my Facebook videos got a little weirder, but I never said anything about the world going to end. I was just trying to make like political posts. And then people like started freaking out, thinking I was going to do something bad to myself, and they like started to call the cops. Oh yeah, and then so like everything that happened, so it all started, the reason why I went to the hospital was because there was some bad stuff that my neighbors were doing to their dogs, both my landlord and this guy up the street. And this was in the time where I had like no food and I was like starving. And I probably was like malnourished, and that's not an excuse, but I was also smoking a lot of weed, which is what the doctors said. I had a weed psychosis, but I do not believe that is a real thing, at least not for me. Weed is the only thing that has never given me a bad side effect. So, I found out that they were mistreating their dogs. Long story short, I ended up feeding their dogs, my landlord's dogs, and then he got mad at me, and then I ended up running over his tree because he was drunk, yelling at me about feeding his dogs, and he was mistreating his dogs. Two of his dogs had cysts on their bodies, and he wasn't taking care of them, and they were like separate away from his house and living all by themselves in this yard that looked abandoned. And I didn't know whose dogs they were at first. And anyway, I was just trying to help these dogs that like desperately looked like they needed help. And then he got all mad at me for it. And then I ran over his tree because he loved this tree more than anything, and he talked about how he really wanted me to watch out and not accidentally run it over because it was a little tree. And in a fit of rage, because I can't handle when people mistreat animals, and then he got mad at me for it, trying to help. I ran over his tree, and that was not a very nice thing to do. Shouldn't have ran over his tree. It was a tree that could have easily been replanted, that I would have replanted. And then at that point, he thought I was like losing my mind. I probably was, because it doesn't take much for me to get angry about something when it happens to a dog. Thank you, Cocoa Puffs. Yeah, and so I was like, well, I have all this energy now. I'm going to go up to the neighbor's house, who has also been mistreating his dogs, who told me he was inbreeding them, and who told me that he had 3 dogs, like, away from his house as well, like, on the other side of the road, just tied up by themselves, away from the street, where they don't have a house or anything. They just... Yeah, I wanted to see what that looked like, because I saw what his other dogs looked like. His other dogs were chained up in front of his house, like under cars and by cars, and which is a common thing here. I don't know why. So I went to the other property to see how his dogs were treated, and they didn't have water in their bowls. Like, the water that was in there was like mud, and they were chained underneath 3 separate trees, and it looked like they were just out there dying, basically, and he didn't look after them at all, and I wanted to so badly just let them go so they could have a chance. But they were too aggressive, so I didn't touch them, and so I went over to his house, and then a whole bunch of other weird stuff happened. We basically got in this big argument, which resulted in a lot of weird stuff happening. But at the end of the argument, I kept telling him to call the police, and he wasn't going to do that because of a lot of reasons. He could have gone to jail. And then at the end of this big argument, I just started crying about all the sadness that there is in the world. And why is it that people mistreat animals? And why do people mistreat each other? And why, like, on this island, everyone is trying to take everything away from the people who live here, the people who deserve this Aina. Like, the things that they're doing up on the mountain is just horrible. They're taking away sacred land from people, and it's to explore outer space, which I appreciate, but also we also need to appreciate, like, what's here on Earth, and this place is sacred, and it's very hard to live here, and all the things that I was trying to do and say were to bring light to how hard it is to live in Hawaii, and why there's like this circle of things that people do that just don't seem to act in the aloha spirit. I don't want to make anyone mad, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. At least the locals do. People who visit here don't understand, but paradise is not paradise for puppies. Dogs are severely mistreated here. It's like one of the worst things that I've ever seen in my life. I have horror stories that I could tell people. One being, I don't want to, whatever. This is the kind of stuff that happens. So my landlord, the guy who said that he took care of all these dogs and he wanted to, and he was one for the dogs. He just didn't look like he was taking care of his dog at all. He told me that the people that he was living next door to, that he ended up moving into this house to take care of those dogs, the ones that were left anyway, they were so severely mistreated and malnourished. 2 mastiffs, and one died, and the one that lived started eating it to survive. I've heard of stories where dogs were chained behind trucks and dragged, and people were like honking their horns and telling them to stop, and they just didn't. I've heard a story of a dog not having any of the pads on his feet because someone like had cut them off. Like, just there's like a big flap on the paw at the top of his paws. People breed dogs to fight. They breed dogs to go hunting for pigs. The dogs that go hunting for pigs, if the people don't care about them and if they get hurt hunting, they'll just let them stay out in the forest and bleed to death and die. And then a lot of people will starve their dogs so that when they go out to hunt, they are hungrier. I've seen multiple people leave their dogs in chicken coops instead of, they leave them in cages too, but I've seen people actually put them in raised above the ground chicken coops, and that's their whole life. They fight them, they inbreed them. It's just, there's a lot of things here that happen to dogs, and there's no reason for it. If you need to go hunting, you can go hunting without the use of hurting dogs. You could use bow and arrow, you could use guns. You don't need to do what you do to dogs. And it only became a felony a couple years ago for people to mistreat domesticated animals in Hawaii, and I think it just became official. Donald Trump said that it's a felony crime everywhere to mistreat domesticated animals. Someone sent me a link about that. So maybe he would have an interesting view of this place if he actually came here and saw what it was like, which is part of my whole original political thing. I was going to ask Donald Trump to come here to see how Hawaii was, because the homelessness is out of control. People need somewhere to live. There's enough space, there's enough homes. There's just too many homeless people, and there's not enough resources for them. It's awful. Everyone comes here and they think it's just paradise and la la land, and it's not. The people who live here struggle every day, and it shouldn't be like that. And I wanted him to actually see what it was like. All these people lost their homes when Kilauea erupted, and Those people didn't just magically get new homes. They were displaced. They had to go elsewhere. They had to move away. Some stayed. Some are still trying to make it by, like, just to get new jobs, new houses, new everything. Like, they had their whole lives taken away from them. And I feel like it just wasn't something that people even cared about that much. It was only news because it was erupting and it was cool looking. And then after that, nobody really cared. And I think that Hawaii needs a lot of help with a lot of things. The infrastructure here, there's not enough hospitals, there's not enough mental care. That's why people choose drugs and why there's crime, and it just, it could be better, and it should be better, because people see this place as happily ever after, and it is for the people who get to come on vacation here, but the people who live here every day in order to make your vacations wonderful, like people that are part of the restaurant industry and like the hotel industry and all of it, like everything is for tourists here. Those people are struggling every day just to survive and like to claim their own land, to have rights to their own land, and to have their land not be taken away from them, like while you're here throwing litter on it and not knowing anything about the culture. And it's just, I think there is this anger that exists here that's been in the culture for a while because everything has been taken away from the people, and it shouldn't be like this. I hate that it's like this, and I hate that I'm seen as a person who's taken away. All I want to do is like give back to this land and try to make this place better than it is already. And I know that a lot of people need help understanding like that some things they do are wrong. Like just because something's been happening since the beginning of time, you know, just like a religion, just like a politic, just like some kind of anything that needed to be challenged. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person because you've been following these rules. It doesn't mean that you aren't capable of changing. You just need to realize like your behaviors and what they're doing and how the life that you have, that you're taking care of, you should be taking care of. You shouldn't be hurting it, especially if it's bringing food to your families. Like, you should be giving it a good life. And it just hurts me because it's like, with all this stuff that I see all the time with people mistreating their animals here, it's so common. And for my animals, the ones that I literally treated as my children every single day, they were spoiled brats. They got their lives, just everything you could want for in a dog's life, they got. And I lived my life for them. Like, every house that I got, everything that I got, everything that I did was for them. And it was all taken away from me for having this moment of time where I just wanted to save the planet. I just wanted to bring awareness to all of the stuff that was going on. And maybe that was a little bit too headstrong, and maybe I came at people in a weird way and made them fear me, but like, I didn't deserve to go to the hospital as many times as I did. The first time was because of me running over the tree and going over to my neighbor's house and then crying a whole bunch about all the shit that's wrong in the world. And then the cops showed up like 3 hours later. I had to talk to them for like another 2 hours. And then they had a third cop show up after they were clearing me and saying that I was good to go. Said everything was fine because I talked to them and I told them I was okay. And then the third cop, when I asked if I could get down because I was sitting on top of my car the whole time we were talking, because when they first showed up, I went outside and they grabbed me, and I told them that they had no right to touch me, so I sat on top of my car and I talked to them civilly, and I made them laugh at my jokes. They thought I was funny. I told them that they reminded me of people that I went to high school with. We were having a good time, and then the third cop showed up, and I was like, okay, they just said that I'm good to go inside now, and I was like, is that cool? And then he's like, yeah, and I get down, and he handcuffs me behind my hands. He drags me across a whole bunch of lava rock, and I'm wearing another onesie. I'm wearing my SpongeBob onesie, and I think that's why they thought I was so crazy, because I was in a SpongeBob onesie, and I was making jokes, but I was just playing around with them. Anyway, so yeah, he dragged me across a whole bunch of lava rock without having any shoes on, threw me in the back of his cop car the whole way, like an hour drive. Didn't say a word to me. I told him that the handcuffs were way too tight on my wrists, and I was crying, and like, yeah, it was awful. Like, he didn't care about my mental well-being. He just wanted to throw the key away and send me off to the hospital. And so I got to the hospital and I was pissed and, you know, relatively slow. Like, they were, they mistreated me already at that point, and I had no idea what was going to happen to my dogs. My dogs, oh, this is why it's hard for me to talk about this. So my dogs, at this point, for my first hospital stay, they were left in the house for 3 days with no food and no water and no ventilation in the house. All the windows were locked up because my dogs get out of the windows. And they were supposed to call someone to feed them, like my landlord or something, or they were going to call animal control. And they didn't do anything, and my dogs could have died. When my boyfriend went there to finally check on them, he said that there was like 26 piles of poop in the house, and yeah, the dogs could have died. He didn't have a car, so he couldn't have gone. And they said that they were going to have the police come back or someone come back to give them food and water, and they didn't do that. And that was the first time. When I got to the hospital, they strapped me down to the bed, and I was definitely like fighting them at this point because I hated what was happening to me. I didn't think that I deserved